Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to all of you in the physics online lecture series for class 10th. In this lecture, we are going to start chapter number 2, Sound. The topics that are going to be covered in this video lecture are sound waves. Sound is produced by a vibrating body. Sound requires material medium for its propagation. Longitudinal nature of sound waves. We will discuss these three aspects of sound waves. Characteristics of sound: loudness, pitch, quality, intensity, sound intensity level. We will discuss these characteristics of the sound. Sound waves. We know that sound is a form of energy. Sound is produced by vibrating bodies. Whenever a body vibrates, it produces vibration in the air, and sound travels through air in the form of longitudinal waves. These waves hit the eardrum and it vibrates, which causes the sensation of sound in our ear. Sound is produced by a vibrating body. To prove this, let us take a tuning fork and strike the tuning fork against a rubber hammer. Then tuning fork will begin to vibrate. We can hear the sound produced by tuning fork by bringing it near to our ear. We can also see the vibrations of tuning fork by touching the tuning fork with a simple pendulum, which will cause the ball or the bob of the pendulum to vibrate, or by putting the tuning fork into the glass of water, which will cause the water to vibrate. Sound requires material medium for its propagation. To prove this, let us take a bell jar apparatus. This apparatus actually consists of a power supply, a bell jar, an electric bell, and a vacuum pump. To prove this, that sound requires a material for its propagation, we turn on the power supply when the air particles are present in the jar. When we turn on the electric bell, we will hear its sound. But after turning on the vacuum pump, the air inside the jar escapes out of it. Then we can't hear the sound of electric bell because there were no air particles in the jar. Same is the case with the sun and earth. There are a lot of nuclear reactions, which are fission and fusion, occurring on the sun. But on earth, we just get the light waves and the heat waves from the sun, which are actually electromagnetic waves. But we can't hear the sound of these reactions occurring on the surface of the sun. It is just because of the presence of vacuum between the earth and the sun. This is how we can get an idea from the natural phenomena that sound requires material medium for its propagation. Longitudinal nature of sound waves. Illustration of longitudinal wave formed by vibrating tuning fork in air is given as above. We also know that compressions are the places where the air pressure is slightly higher and the density of air particles is greater over there, whereas there are refractions or the regions where the air pressure is low and the density of air particles is also low. This actually explains the longitudinal nature of sound waves. This suits to the definition of longitudinal wave, which actually define as the wave in which the particles of the medium moves back and forth along the direction of propagation of wave. Let's talk about the characteristics of sound. Loudness. Loudness is the characteristics of sound by which a loud and a faint sound can be distinguished. It depends on a number of factors. If the amplitude of the vibrating body is higher, then we will get a louder voice. Similarly, if the area of the vibrating body is greater, then again we will get a louder voice. Distance from the vibrating body is also a factor which affects the loudness. If the distance is greater, then the loudness will be less. Pitch. Pitch is the characteristics of sound by which we can distinguish between a shrill and a grave sound. Pitch depends upon the frequency, and the relation between the frequency and the pitch is direct relation. The voice of children and ladies is shrill because of higher frequency and also because of higher pitch. But the sound of men is grave because of low frequency and low pitch. Question arises that if there are two sounds and both of the sounds are of same loudness and pitch, then how we can differentiate between the two sounds? So here comes the concept of quality. The characteristics of sound by which we are able to distinguish between the two sounds which are of same loudness and same pitch. For example, while standing outside a room, we can distinguish between the notes of a piano and a flute being played inside the room. This is because of the quality of the notes with which we can distinguish between the sound or different objects. Here are the examples of tuning fork, flute, and clarinet. These are the waveforms which actually describe the quality of sound. Intensity. As we know that intensity is defined as energy per unit area per unit time. Doesn't matter the energy is sound energy, light energy or heat energy. But here, because we are discussing intensity of sound, so we will define it as follows. Sound energy passing per second through a unit area held perpendicular to the direction of propagation of sound wave is called intensity of sound. It depends on the amplitude, and the relation between intensity and the amplitude is direct relation. Greater will be the intensity if greater is the amplitude. It is a physical quantity and can be measured accurately. As it is energy per unit area per unit time, so it can be measured in terms of watt per square meter. Sound intensity level. The difference between the loudness L of an unknown sound and the loudness L0, which is actually the loudness of the faintest audible sound, is called the intensity level of the unknown sound. It is mathematically defined as k log I divided by I naught, where I and I naught are the intensities of the respective sounds. It can be measured in bells. At the end of this lecture, you have to solve this assignment. This assignment will not only help you to revise the previous concepts, but also you will be able to check the level of your understanding.